Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here, obviously, to talk about the Ice Age adventures of Buck Wild. And we have from New York, we have John C. Donkin, and from Los Angeles, we have Lori Forte, the executive producer. John, of course, is the director of the film. So hello, both. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Great. Thank you for having us.
Doing well, thanks.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So before we get stuck into the movie, I'd just like to hear a little bit from you both about your respective journeys into like the world of animated features. Now, clearly we don't, have all evening, so I'm not asking for your life stories, but I wondered if there was a particular, like a breakthrough moment, perhaps you could talk about that really sort of set you on the path, if you like. So Lori, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can pinpoint that moment. I was actually working, I fell in love with animation, seeing the Disney films, the musicals at that time. And I really wanted to get into that kind of storytelling. So I actually got a job as a development executive at Disney many years ago. Yeah. And I actually became, I was a creative executive on the first computer animated film, Toy Story. So working with Pixar and working on that first, milestone of a movie, it was just such a wonderful experience. And the way they were telling stories and the style of the animation was so wonderful. I said, these are the stories I want to tell. These are the kinds of movies I want to make. So that was my my moment. And from that point on, after Toy Story, I actually got a producing deal at 20th Century Fox, and they were looking to start their division, their family division, start an animation division, and asked me to come up with some ideas, and I came up with several of them, and one of which was Ice Age. And so that was the beginning of the journey of the Ice Age saga, I would say 22 years ago. Wow. That's kind of been my journey.
Amazing. Thank you. And John, how about you?
So mine's interesting too. I went to undergraduate film school and was studying cinematography. And that was sort of my specialties, like being around cameras and all that. So always wanted to be in the film business. And when I was nearly done with my degree, I found out about this research group that was on campus. They were doing computer animation research and was invited to participate as a graduate student. They were going to pay my tuition. They were going to pay me a fee, basically just getting paid to like create stuff. And it felt like a really good deal. And this was in the early 80s when computer animation was just getting started. And I saw some of the possibility that was available even then and thought, well, someday we might be making movies using this technology. And so I started studying computer animation. And so I was involved in the huge growth of computer graphics capability during the mid 80s, when every year there was new stuff that was being developed and being seen. It was very exciting. And then of course, Toy Story was made. And I met Chris Wedge, who's one of the founders of Blue Sky, along the way. And after he had left, he had been working on Tron, and that whole thing shut down and whatnot. And so in 98, I think it was, I joined Blue Sky Studios. This was after being an animator, being an animation director, doing mostly commercial work. And we were I was at Blue Sky Studios, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to do a feature animated film. And at the time we were thinking that we would do something with robots, because robots, we knew how to do robots really well. We could render metal and all that. And robots wasn't our first movie. Robots ended up being our second movie, but our first movie was this little thing called Ice Age that Lori brought to the studio. And I remember reading the script for the first time, and it was full of furry animals and natural environments and water and forests and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, how the heck are we gonna be able to do this? Because all the features up until that time were toys, like plastic toys and hard ants and things that you can do pretty well. But this was a character with furry animals, and we had to figure out how to do it. And this is the one that we wanted to make right away. And over the course of the 3 years that it took to make the film, we sort of figured out how to do it and how to make it. And by the end of, I think midway through, I was sort of figuring out how to do it. I was building the pipeline and figuring out how all the pieces would fit together. And then they needed somebody to help run the machine. And that's when I made the leap from being more of on the technical side into producing and worked with Lori to produce the line on getting the first Ice Age made. And then from there, it's just been movie after movie. And
yeah,
like I said, I went on to Robots after that, which was our sophomore project.
Yeah. Cool, fantastic. So yeah, I'd just like to say, obviously, to everyone in the audience here, that you can ask your own questions, and we will move on to your questions. So if you can use the Q&A function to do that, that would be fantastic. Start sending them in. Don't hold back, because obviously I have plenty I can talk about, but we'd love to hear from you guys as well. So Lori, so you mentioned you first pitched a movie set in the Ice Age. Did you have any idea you'd still be making them 22 decades later?
I didn't even think we'd be making a second one. So we were just trying to get through the first one. I mean, at that point, I don't remember seeing too many animated sequels. So clearly just to make one was all really we were thinking about. And clearly didn't know that it was going to be a success. In fact, thought the opposite for a while.
Really?
But as soon as it opened, and became a success, it was mind-boggling. And then ultimately, a few months later, they said, let's do another one. So no, I didn't know that we'd do a second. I certainly didn't know we'd get up to a fifth, and now Buck Wild. So it's been the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, fantastic. And so, John, this is your, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first film as a director, first feature film as director?
That's correct,
right?
Yeah.
So how has that been for you then, in terms of, obviously you've got tons of experience making these films, but how has it been shifting into directing? Is it much of a learning curve going from what you were doing before to this?
Well, during the course of the 6 features that I produced, and then there were several shorts and a couple of TV things, I'd sort of been in the role of producer and also working with first-time directors. So in some cases, I was sort of helping them learn the process, so I kind of went from teacher in a sense, because I had been around many of the directors that had gained experience and learned from them just by association. So when it was time to step into the role, I sort of knew what I needed to do, but it was wonderful to be able to actually do it. And I felt very comforted by partnering again with Lori, because she and I had worked together for so long, and there was a shorthand that we had, and I think rather early in this process, started to get a really nice rhythm working together, and I felt very supported. And but it felt very natural, because as you say, I was sort of brought in to the project because I did have knowledge about the Ice Age franchise and would know how the characters should move and what they should look like, and how, what kinds of jokes they would tell, and that sort of stuff. So it was a not that difficult a transition for me, to be frank, but I loved it. I really, really liked it a lot. It was fun.
Fantastic. Oh, great. So I mean, obviously this is kind of a question for both of you. So, whoever wants to jump on it first, but I'm curious. I mean, you get 6 episodes, if you like, into a series, very beloved, has great character design and a great style and everything like that. So obviously you don't want to change too much, but how do you strike the balance between making it familiar and welcoming, comfortable to people who know it, but also thinking, well, we got to try something a bit different, we got to try something new? How do you sort of walk that line between those two things?
I'll let John answer after this, but because I think we both have our own ideas of what I think as far as developing another one, or to keep it fresh. You know, we always try to stick with the essence and spirit of what makes an Ice Age movie and what audiences are looking for. So we want to keep those familiar characters, the lovable characters, the dysfunctional family that they've created. And we, you know, obviously want to make it fresh. And so putting them in different situations, different stories. We also bring in new characters often. We take them to new adventures and new territories. But I think key is really the core of our movie is really about family, and all our movies have to do with that family theme. And very much like and I think our stories are very human stories, and they're very emotionally based, even though they're comedies and action adventures. But we always strive for the comedy, the character comedy, and the character emotional arcs. So as the family, right from the very beginnings, 3 dysfunctional characters came in and created a family, even they weren't related by blood. You could, you know, families anywhere, people you work with, people you go to school with, people your actual family, your extended family. And what we did in each movie is we expanded the family a little bit. And we had, you know, just as families grow and change, we sort of mirrored that with our characters. So each movie, our characters had grown up a little bit and learned something. In the next movie, they're going on to the next phase, the next stage. You know, they have a baby, the baby grows up, she gets married. It's everything that people can relate to and audiences can relate to. So it feels like it's fresh. It feels like it's relatable. And then obviously our adventures are always new and fresh, and we find new villains or new, you know, characters to bring in, because we want to absolutely always have something fresh in it, so that people are coming back and they're you know, it's a little nostalgic to have them come back and feel like they're back home in the Ice Age, just as John and I felt like we were coming home to this one. It had been a few years since we had done an Ice Age movie, so coming back to these characters made us feel like we were coming home. Now, how to tell a story that feels fresh, not only to the audience, but to us as well.
Yeah, great.
And in terms of, you know, the balance of keeping it kind of on brand, you know, it is tricky, because there's sort of an intuition that we have about when a joke feels right and when it doesn't. And there's sometimes there's a line that you crosses over and say, well, you know, that's not really something we would do in an Ice Age world. I often use an analogy, like jokes that would play on a Flintstones TV show, for example, would not necessarily work in Ice Age. There's a point at which it like crosses a line, and it's hard to know exactly when that is. And sometimes we actually break our own rules if it's funny enough. You know, if it's really funny and it's you can hit it and get off of it. You know, sometimes it can go over what we might normally do, but you can kind of just tell when the comedy is right for Ice Age. And, you know, also things like performance, you know, how the characters move. Buck is very snappy, and the way he moves on the screen is unique. And so I was able to talk to the animators and get them to sort of embrace that style. And luckily there's this great library of reference, you know, look at the other movies and see how the characters move. And there are certain tricks that you have to do to get it. You know, with the mammoths, you don't see a lot of the mouths because the trunk is all there. So a lot of the emotion comes out of the eyes, and, you know, so those kinds of things keep it on brand. Now, just another quick thing that was really helpful to us is there's kind of a nostalgia that we have in this one, where when we're with the original herd, it plays very like Ice Agey, very nostalgic, and sort of harkens to the other films. And that was also reflected in the score quite a lot. We had a composer who was a protege of John Powell, and he was able to use some of the themes from some of the earlier films, and that was used in those moments. But then when we've got new characters, and Buck and Crash and Eddie all had new themes for this, because we were going on a new adventure with them. So it's like listening to your favorite band. You know, you want a new record from your band. You want it to sound a bit like the other band, but you don't want just the same songs all over again. So it's finding that balance. You know, it's very much like that.
Amazing, cool. Just a reminder again to everyone listening, please send your questions in. I've got more than enough that I can ask for the next 10 minutes. So come on, pop them on through, because I'd love to ask some questions which aren't my own as well. But sticking with mine, one character I'd love to just discuss a little bit is, and in terms of the the design of this character, you know, from the concept as well, but also how you made it work is the character of Orson, who has this great idea of the dinosaur with the big brain, and that kind of really striking sort of like it's almost like a science fiction thing, isn't it? Almost like this huge brain behind the crest of the, you know, the whatever you would call it, Styracosaurus or Triceratops crest, or whichever kind of dinosaur it is. Apologies to dino fans out there for me getting it completely wrong, which species. But I'd love to hear, you know, the thoughts that went into the creation of Orson, and any challenges you may have faced creating him.
Well, we started, yeah. So Peter DeSav is our character designer, and Peter DeSav has designed the characters for the entire Ice Age canon. You know, he at least the animals. He did not design the humans in the first one, but so he's our genius when it comes to coming up with these character designs. And when we were thinking about the villain, this was a drawing that he had done, and it's just like this enormous brain, this bipedal kind of weird guy. But when we were developing the character and how it would move, we worked with the actor Utkarsh and Budkar, who is just a brilliant comedic dude. And so we just kind of riffed on it. And I love the idea that he felt that he was the smartest guy, yet he had the two dumbest sidekicks. And so, you know, we wanted to come up with some simple personalities for them. And, you know, one is like a guy that's just like he gets too close, you know, like back away. And the other guy is a copier, you know, so he's mimicking him all the time. It just drove him nuts. So I like the idea that he was the smartest guy, but he had the two dumbest sidekicks. And he was just on the edge, he was just barely keeping it all together, you know, and so it was just really fun. And the animators had fun rigging the character with that massive brain. It ended up being very squishy, and it actually, I don't know if you noticed, but it sort of pulses when he gets mad. And
all right.
Yeah, and then there's this funny gag that we threw in there where Buck steps on the squishy part of his brain, and it like makes a connection in there. It was just a joke that we came up with. But we had so much fun developing the character, and he really kind of evolved through the recording sessions, and then the writing would modify, and just how he would move. It was just a fun character to create, for sure.
He's also a delicious villain. He's one of those delicious villains that are, you know, they're really, they're maniacs and they're evil, but they also are really comedic. And to juxtapose the comedy and the villainy together makes it a much more delicious villain.
Yeah. No, I remember. I just remember talking to the writers that they were worried that they were writing him too goofy, in a sense, and he wouldn't come off as menacing. But so there's the one scene where he really shows his villainy. You know, he's a bully, so he's only as strong as the people that are supporting him. But he manages to get 120 vicious raptors to support him, and then it becomes quite formidable. So at the end of the day, he felt like he was formidable, even though he was ridiculous. Yeah,
no, he's great. He's great fun as a character. And then of course we've got the hero of the story, or one of the heroes of the story. I mean, Buck. You know, so what was the thought behind bringing back Buck, really, and also getting to work with Simon Pegg again? You know, that must have been good fun.
Well, part of it was getting to work with Simon Pegg again. That's always the inspiration. Anytime you can, you work with Simon Pegg. But having, you know, brought Simon into Ice Age 3, when we introduced the character of Buck, as soon as he took the material and started voicing the character, he just became Buck. He was synonymous with Buck, and he was just brilliant. He's the most fun guy. He's really smart. He's a great comedian, and he's really great at characters. All the characters he plays in all his movies are just so unique and fun. And Buck was just, it was just such a joy to work with him. And he became one of a beloved characters, not only to audiences, but certainly to us. And so after Ice Age 3, and how much fun we had working with Simon, I knew I wanted to bring him back. We had already developed Ice Age 4, and I knew I couldn't bring him into that organically. But I told him, I said, I'm going to think of another project, another Ice Age movie to bring you into. I'm going to bring your character back. And so when it came to Ice Age 5, which I absolutely molded to have his character in there, called him up and said, this is, you know, we're ready. And he was so gung-ho to come back. I mean, just great. And as soon as he came into Ice Age 5, after it's like probably a 4 or 5 years separation, 4-year separation until we made the next one, he got in front of the mic, and again, the moment he started voicing Buck, he just was instantly Buck again. And so I knew that even after 5, didn't know if we would get to make another one at that point, and things were changing in the world of Fox and Disney. And so this time when we got a chance to do another one, we decided to actually look at our all of the characters we've done in the Ice Age films, and take an opportunity to actually focus on a few characters that we loved but didn't spend enough time with. And one was Buck and the other were Crash and Eddie, and just organically they came together, and it worked out for us to do that. But yes, Buck, it was always about Simon, it was about the character of Buck. He was written so well, he was just so larger than life, eccentric, funny, lovable. He's guardian of the lost world of dinosaurs, for Pete's sake. So, you know, there was really reason for us to come back to this character.
Awesome. Awesome. Great stuff. Well, we've got a few minutes left. So I suppose the obvious way to wrap things up would be to ask, what's the plan for the future? You know, we're kind of, you know, are there going to be further adventures of Buck Wild, or if you've got ideas for other ways to take it, or
well, that
or
depends on you guys.
Depends on the audiences.
Yeah, and no, look, if the audiences really respond to this one and want to see more, then we have stories and we have ideas, and you know, more characters, and so yeah, we're ready to do it if the audience is wanting to watch it. So that's really the answer. And
okay,
you know, so we'll see.
You got ideas, right? There's
Oh, we have so many ideas. I could go on and on and on. Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, these are characters that we've come to know so well. We're also very protective of them. And again, because they're like a family, and they're individual characters who grow and change, just like we as people and audiences and grow and change in our families, so too do they. And so there's, as long as we keep going, and they can keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I do like that. It's such a sort of a lovely touch that actually the story does embrace change and embraces the idea of people moving on, and, you know, family members going off and doing their own thing because the time is right for them to go and do that, you know, sort of like the empty nest that at some point, you know, we all face.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that was a lovely touch. Well, look, I mean, thank you both so much for you know, sharing your insights and for, you know, taking us on this little journey back to the prehistorical, or should I say pre-hysterical perhaps, age, but you never heard that one before. So yeah, I mean, thanks Lori Forte and John C. Donkin. Cheers for joining us and talking Ice Age.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, ciao.
Goodbye.